BBC Radio Shropshire.
Good morning, 7:38 on The Breakfast Show. We have been discussing the cost of living over the past few weeks, the rising cost of living, what it all means to the money in your pocket and the ways you can make savings. This week, we're checking in with business owners in the county with tax rises on the horizon and costs going up. You can hear from one in Jackfield after 8 on the programme. First, let's talk generally about the situation for firms. Paul Brown is a finance expert at WR Partners in Shropshire and joins me now on the programme. Good morning, Paul.
Morning, Adam. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for coming on the programme. Let's start with the planned rise in national insurance. Can you tell us what is happening?
Yeah, so essentially from April this year, the start of the new tax year, national insurance is going up by 1.25%, and that's going to apply to people who are employees, people who are self-employed, but also to employers as well. And so for people, for example, who are employees earning over the threshold for next year, 9,880, then they're going to see an extra 1.25% national insurance coming out of their pay over on a monthly, weekly basis, whatever their pay periods are. So, and I think, you know, that's the key one. I think the other bit that perhaps has received less attention is that those people who receive dividends, they're also going to see an increase of 1.25% in their tax on those dividends as well. So that's going to apply to business owners who quite often will take a lot of their money out of the company in dividends, but also people who've got share portfolios. So I think while the NIC rise has seen a lot of attention, I think there is that also additional tax for people who aren't necessarily getting paid as employees. So I think, you know, clearly across the board, it's going to be quite a significant cost for people.
It's impacting most people, isn't it? Most businesses, as you said there. Do you think business owners will be concerned about the rise in national insurance?
I think they absolutely have to be. I mean, I think, you know, on top of the increase in the national minimum wage, which is clearly great for those who are receiving getting paid the minimum wage, but for employers, that's an additional cost. And then on top of that, to have this national insurance rise as well, it's clearly going to have a significant increase on their cost base. And a lot of them, you know, talking about the cost of living, it's not just that the individual potentially is going to be paying more national insurance, but they might find that prices go up because the employers have also got to, you know, increase prices to try and cover the cost of the extra taxes and wages that they're paying as well. So it could be a double whammy for the consumer in a lot of cases.
What help is there out there for small businesses who are facing all the other rising costs? Are there still grants to apply for, I suppose, things like that?
Yeah, so particularly for businesses in the sort of retail accommodation, the hospitality business, because obviously they probably have been most impacted by a lot of the longer standing restrictions, then there are still some small grants available. Now they depend on the rateable value of the premises that the business operates out of, but there's grants of up to £6,000 for those businesses operating from larger premises, which are still available. They need to, if businesses haven't, in the sort of retail hospitality sectors, haven't applied for those already, they need to go onto the local council website and find the page there and actually make an application. Some of the grants in the past were paid automatically based on what the business was recorded as at the council, but I think for these grants, there is an application needed. So, you know, the business owners will need to go either to Shropshire Council or Telford and Wrekin Council and actually make an application on there for the funding. So that is still there. I think obviously, for the retail businesses, there's still the reduction in the VAT rate. But that's going to come to an end as matters stand at the moment at the end of March. So some of the support that was there is actually starting to be withdrawn as well.
I know a busy time last month with the deadline for filling in tax returns. I know that the slight changes in the deadlines for that. It's a big lump of funds to find in one go for those on self-assessment, isn't it? Is there any help on that?
There is. So you can actually apply to HMRC, depending on the size of your tax bill. You can go online and actually apply for a kind of monthly payment plan for your self-assessment tax bill. So essentially, if you Google HMRC self-assessment, then there'll be links there to go on and actually be able to spread forward those payments. The key there is, if you're going to do that, then you need to do it by 1st of April. Because if you don't do it by 1st of April or you don't pay your tax bill by 1st of April, then there's a 5% penalty on any tax that you haven't paid. So, yeah, absolutely, it's a big cost for people There is support, but people actually have to actively go and find it. If they just don't pay, then they're going to end up getting hit not just with interest on the tax, but also potentially with an extra 5% to pay as well. So I think, and being a tax person, I tend to leave mine to the last minute as well. It's kind of like the doctor never really treats themselves; they treat their patients instead. If people are thinking, well, I've got a bit of extra time, I don't need to worry about it, they still need to actively get on and get that sorted, because otherwise they're going to get hit with additional costs.
Do you foresee 2022 being a very busy time, busier than it's ever been before, given all the changes and the rises that are to come?
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's one of those things, isn't it, where sort of quite often increases in tax rates, particularly for sort of at the higher end, can actually reduce the tax take, because a lot more people suddenly get interested in tax planning. One thing I'm predicting is that a lot of people, for example, who are business owners, they may actually look at their position and say, well, actually, if I pay myself a bit more by the end of the current tax year, I might save myself 1.25% rather than pay it next year. So, it might be that it's worth paying tax a bit early in order to actually save that sort of additional tax cost. So we're already finding clients who are asking us about whether that's something that's worth doing. So I think in the lead up to those changes, we're going to see quite a bit of activity. But, I think as costs go up, people nobody enjoys paying tax, but, as costs go up, it's something that people suddenly become a lot more focused on, because they're working so hard to get that profit. They don't really want to lose, an ever increasing chunk of that in tax.
Listen, Paul, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much for coming on to the Breakfast Show. That is Paul Brown from WR Partners in Shropshire, talking about the rising cost of living over the past few weeks, something we've talked about on the show